All right, folks, it is 5:32. As you see, people are trickling through, so we're going to get this presentation started. Hello, my name's Damon with Penn State's Office of Student Aid. We'll have myself, my colleague Julie from the Suckla Family or Miller Family Literacy Center. We'll have them or her later, and she'll be able to go over her portion as well. Today, we're going to go over some budgeting, understanding debt, and finding loans, and just go over some helpful tricks with you folks. So, as you see, some of you may have been a part of our previous webinars. Those are currently posted to YouTube and they are currently online. So if you want to view those, you're more than welcome to go view those after this. Again, today we're going to go over budgeting, understanding debt, and finding loans. Before we get started, just going to go over some brief house rules. So again, this will be recorded. So we posted on about sometime early next week. You'll get an email when this posting is live, and then you'll be able to view it on YouTube then after that. Please, while we're going through this, there's a little Q&A portion that you're welcome to type in your questions. We'll have our staff in the back end gladly answer those questions as they come up. Additionally, since this is going to be reported online, please keep your mics and cameras and all that stuff off. We'll just answer your questions as we can. And then again, you'll get a link when this is available next week or available next week for you to watch again. We do have a webinar coming up next May 7th. So definitely if you have not registered for that and some other ones that are really useful as well. But if you have not already, definitely give the previous webinars we have done a watch as well because there's some pretty good information on there as well. Here's our agenda for today. We're going to do a quick review of the financial aid offer and estimated expenses, student loan options, loan interest, making a debt management plan, financial aid timeline and resources, and our Q&A we have at the end of this. We'll do a live portion or more live portion where we'll have our colleagues and I answer questions, kind of help facilitate his questions as well. So, finding your financial aid offer. Some of you folks may have done this already. If you have not, here's how you do it. So, first we'll go to LionPath. Go to lionpathsupport.psu.edu. You'll select Students, Faculty, and Staff Login. You'll go to the My Finances on the top right hand of the screen, and then the financial aid on the left. We'll then select the aid year 2027 and click on View Aid Detail. So, if you have not gotten an aid offer, which some students may have not, you'll see we have as your social security number on your application. We had almost 3,500 students who did not have their social security numbers on their applications. So this is something, if this is an issue and you have not gotten your application yet, did you submit your FAFSA? Okay, you submitted your FAFSA. Did I upload my social security number? All right, if you didn't, you can do that via accounts.psu.edu, and then you'll click on personal information, and then you'll be uploaded from there. Again, a lot of reasons why students have not gotten their financial aid offers is because they have not uploaded their social security numbers. And also, you want to make sure, do you have any to-do list items in My Penn State or LionPath? Again, if you have gotten your financial aid offer and have not yet viewed it, you go to lionpathsupport.psu.edu, select students, faculty, and staff, log in, and then My Finances in the top right-hand corner. It's like a little money sign. I'm in the right-hand corner of the screen. Go select financial aid from the left, select 8/20/27, and then view award detail. And again, if you have not received your offer, reach out to us so we can look into that and see what the issue may be. So here's that social security we were mentioning. Again, this is a very important thing to make sure your FAFSA connects to your Penn State account. So as I was mentioning, you can log into My Penn State. Again, accounts.psu.edu. Under Home, you can also choose Submit Social Security Number. Under Account, choose Personal Information. Click Social Security Number to expand the section, and then click the plus sign next to Social Security Number. Enter your social and click Update and save the changes. Again, this is a very important step in doing so because your FAFSA has your Social Security Number. So if we don't have that on our Penn State account, we're not able to match your FAFSA because we're going with social, so we can't match it. A lot of folks who apply to the Common App, it will not request your Social Security number. So that's often why this issue happens. Again, it's a relatively easy fix. Again, you can go to log into My Penn State or visit accounts.psu.edu. Under Home, you'll choose that Submit Social Security number. If you go to accounts.psu.edu, under Account, choose Personal Information, and you'll see where you can upload that. Again, get that done if you have not done already, as is a very important step to match your FAFSA to your account to get your aid offers out. So, under considerations, you have what expenses do I need to cover? What can I cover out of pocket? And should I consider additional loans? So these are one of the things where when you're looking at your total estimated payment. So these are kind of what you would consider. So what you consider right now is your estimated your billable expenses. So here you see this is representation for an out-of-state student. It's about $30,000, $280 a semester, or about $60,000, 500 or $60,560 for the year. This is an important thing where you want to look at if any grants or scholarships are offered. Here you want to look at plus all types of aid offered. So there's again all aids or any loans that are offered. Again, when you're looking at your aid offer, loans will technically count as aid, even though they are an item you need to repay back, but they are something that will count as aid. Billable expenses, subtract that. And you have our total estimated payment to the university down the bottom in the yellow. So here, after the students' grants and scholarships and loans came through, have about $20,000, a little over $20,000 a semester, or $40,000, $425 for the year. Again, these are things you need to consider when you're making your choices. But this is the total estimated payment, and this is available in your aid offer itself. At the top screen, you'll see at top of your aid offer, you will see the total estimated payment portion, or billable expenses portion, sorry. And then below that, you'll see your estimated grants and scholarships. And just below that, you'll then see your total estimated payment to university. Again, all these numbers, if you have your aid offer out, are currently out there and you can view them. Like these are estimated costs, but they're pretty close to what you'll bend your billable expenses will be. The only real significant differences may be if you're going to a Commonwealth campus or World campus, if your housing is different from what's originally selected, and then if your meal plans, if you pick a higher or lower meal plan, those would be the only real reasons those would change at this time. Again, the current expenses are estimated, but they're pretty close to what you'll end up your overall cost would be for the year. Then you're also welcome to click on our college financing plan here at the bottom. Then I'll give you a little quick tool and kind of help you out if kind of go over some financing options as well. So this is kind of our educational loans. So we'll click through the things here as I click through. But first, you'll see your federal direct, subsidized, and unsubsidized loan. This is in our student only section. And then you have your federal direct parent plus loan, parent name only. And a lot of you folks may know private educational loans. These are usually with a student with an eligible or credit-worthy cosigner. So anyone who wants to essentially take that loan, help be a cosigner, that's who would take that loan. Again, you would have seen if you had your A offer out, you would have gotten the federal direct subsidized or unsubsidized loan or a combination of the two. Again, those are in your student only, and we'll just hash down on the federal direct parent plus loan, name mentions, parent only. And your private education loans, again, are usually in the student's name with an eligible cosigner. Here's your amounts for these. So for your amount here, you have your $5,500 for your first year students. For your federal plus loans, you'll keep within the federal limits, which will be about $20,000 for the year with all the new changes going on. So that's something we'll update as we see it. And then for your private education loans, this can be used up to the remaining cost of attendance. For cost of attendance, again, I would highly recommend watching one of the previous videos we did. I think it was 2 sessions ago, where we went over cost of attendance a little more closely. So that's where you'll find out like the amount you can go up to. But the short synopsis of it is your cost of attendance is your billable expenses that I kind of went over in the previous slide, and then your non-billable, which is the section lower down in your estimate in your aid offer itself. So again, your federal direct loans for first year students will be up to $5,500. For your federal direct parent plus loan, keep within those federal limits, and then your private education loans can be used up to your cost of attendance. And again, if you want more information on the cost of attendance, you can go to our previous webinar about that as well if you want more information. So here's kind of how the approval process works. So with those federal direct subsidized and unsubsidized loans, you must have the FAFSA submitted and meet the enrollment requirements. These are generally offered as long as you are meeting the requirements they have, meeting certain eligibility requirements and the credit limits as well. For your first year, traditionally, unless you are taking lesser courses, traditionally you'll be taking 12 credits or a little higher, so you would be meeting the requirements. For the requirements there, you must be taking 6 or greater credits or half-time status. So for your federal parent plus loan, you have a FAFSA submitted. Again, it is federal, so it will require having a FAFSA on file. Enrollment requirements. These requirements are pretty similar to the direct subsidized and unsubsidized loan. Having those 6 credits, as well as meeting SAP eligibility, which is a 2.0 or greater, and then being within like certain other, if they have any other requirements there. There are any federal requirements you have, and then the federal parent credit approval as well. So the main difference was you'll see with the Direct Plus loan and private education loans, they might have different requirements. With the parent with a private education loan, sorry, you'll have the lenders might have different approval processes. So when you are applying for these, you want to make sure that you are looking into the requirements for the lenders because again, they do traditionally they are pretty close to the same, but they do vary lender to lender. So it's something whenever you're looking for loans, especially private educational loans, you want to make sure what the lender's requirements are. Because again, they do vary. They are pretty similar amongst lenders, but each one has its own little special thing. So when you're doing that process, just clarify that and make sure that you know what the approval process is like. So next, you have repayment. Traditionally, or the federal direct subsidized and unsubsidized loan, these will begin 6 months after ending enrollment. So either you graduated, you're no longer in school, any of those options where you're no longer enrolled, 6 months after that. If you go from, your first year and then go to grad school after that and all that stuff, that's still in it 6 months, still applicable after you're done with grad school. So you'll enroll in the federal repayment plans. So for those, again, 6 months after you graduate, payment plans are traditionally 6 months after graduating. So for the plus loan, or the federal direct parent plus loan, there is an option to begin 6 months after ending enrollment again, but there are a couple options. There are, I think, three options there to look at. So definitely when you're enrolling in the plus loan, if you choose to use that, just make sure which option you want to enroll in because there are a couple options there. For private educational loans, getting the traditional standard or the usual standard is 6 months after you graduate. But some lenders may have different requirements. That's one of those things, again, you want to make sure. Unfortunately, there are so many lenders out there, so we really don't have, requirements on every single lender. But you just want to clarify through your application what their repayment option is. That's definitely something, again, you want to make sure before your application is complete, what their requirements are. So next we'll have how the interest accrues. So again, subsidized and unsubsidized loans. So the interest will actually not accrue. Well, the government will be paying off the interest, but when repayment starts, that's when the interest will actually start to accrue. So again, that's only for the subsidized loan does that happen. For the unsubsidized loan, it's immediately after the loan is dispersed. Again, the main difference between the subsidized and unsubsidized is that subsidized will not accrue interest until repayment starts. So that's 6 months after, and unsubsidized will start to accrue after the loan is dispersed. For the Parent Plus loan, very similar to the unsubsidized, interest will start to accrue after it disperses. And then for the private educational loans, those ones do vary again. So these are I know I'm saying up to the lender, and each one are a little different, but truly it is up to the lender and how their portions work. Because they are private, they might have different regulations. So again, just clarify what the process is and see what the lender has for their repayment or their interest accrual. Again, traditionally it is after it disperses, but again, you want to make sure what the lender has and what the requirements are before you do your applications. Again, you have time to do that, so definitely, take some time to research those lenders. That applications aren't open up till July for the private education loans and Parent Plus loans, so you can have time to think about what you want to do. Next, how do we apply for these? So, for your federal direct subsidized and unsubsidized loan, you have your FAFSA application. So that will be submit your FAFSA. That's how you get that one. For your federal direct plus loan, parent plus loan, again, you have to have that FAFSA on file. So this will be applied, but this is an additional step for you. You'll apply through studentaid.gov, again, where you do your FAFSA, and you'll click on grants and loans and complete it through there. So for how do you apply for a private education loan? Again, we don't have a recommended lender list, so you just simply you can Google search private student loan lenders and shop through and see. Then you'll individually click on the lenders' websites to see how their application process is. When you are applying for the private educational loans, look around. Don't just click the first one on the list that you may see. Take the time to shop around because each lender will have its own pros and cons. So you definitely want to do that research now. When those applications open up later, you can do that. So again, for the application process for the federal direct subsidized and unsubsidized loan, you apply via FAFSA. For your federal direct parent plus loan, must have that FAFSA on file, but you apply for via studentaid.gov and you click on grants and loans. And then for private education loans, again, we can't recommend one, but you can just Google search private student loan lenders and you'll see a plethora of lenders out there. And again, each application will vary, so you definitely just want to click on the lender's websites and see what their processes are. So just to kind of double down on the loan periods. So whenever you're doing a summer loan, this is a summer loan period 2026. The loan term dates would traditionally be May to August 2026. So those applications are actually, it is April 2026 now. So those applications are open now. Again, that's for summer 2026. For fall 2026, we'll do type in fall 2026 and spring 26. Those applications won't open up in July 2026. If you're doing a fall only loan, the loan term dates will be August to December 2026. If you're doing a fall 2026 and spring 2027 loan together, that'll be August 2026 to May 2027. Again, the fall only and the fall and spring are open July 2026. If you're doing a spring only loan for 2027, those loan term dates will be January to May 2027, and those applications are actually not open until October 2026. And then lastly, for summer 2027, there are your loan terms, May to August 2027. And those applications will not be open until next April 2027. Again, summer loans, you can actually be, it is April now, so a lot of those applications are out there. Again, when you're selecting your loan terms, you'll do May to August 2026. And again, for fall only, August to December 2026. For fall 2026 and spring 2027, you'll do August 2026 to May 2027, and those applications won't open up until July. And then for spring 2027, you'll do loan term of January to May 2027. Application will open up to October of 26. And then lastly, again, for your summer 2027, you'll do May to August 2027, and that one will open up to next April. So the private educational loan terms, again, they're generally along the same exact lines. So we're rehashed again. Private educational loans, their loan stuff may vary. So whenever you're selecting loan terms, again, summer only 2026 to May to August 2026, April 26th. Fall, again, August to December 2026, and fall and spring both be again that July 2026 deadline. So that's what I was mentioning. You do have time to do your research. So don't just rush into it and again pick the first lender you have that pops up on that list when you search it. Take the time to look at your lenders. Again, so you can see if maybe your bank still does them and stuff like that. So definitely take the time to do your research now because you do have until July. If you're in summer start, you can do those applications now, but you still have some time if when you're selecting your loan. So don't just rush into it and pick a lender. Take the time to make sure you pick the lender that best fits your guys' situation. All right. So I will hand it off to my colleague Julie. I will take my camera off, maybe if it wants to work, and we'll go through her.
Thank you, Damon. And hello, everyone. So I am Julie Heaton. I do not work in student aid, but we work very closely with student aid at Penn State in the center that I do work for. So I work in the Sokolov Miller Family Financial and Life Skills Center. And I'm here because this center is really focused on helping students, Penn State students and their families navigate overall financial wellness. So piece of that is paying for college and really making informed decisions around paying for college. So, what I want to bring you today on the screen, you can, if you want to check out some of our services, I'll get back to this at the end as well. But what I really want to bring you today is 3 questions around around paying for college that I want you to consider. So, if we can go to the next slide. All right. So the first question, we're going to go through each of these separately, but go ahead and take a screenshot. So you take the time, do yourself the favor to ask yourself these questions going into, uh-oh, hope you guys can't hear that. My fire alarm's going off. Someone will get that. Always exciting. It's an alert to pay attention to what I'm about to say. So take the time with your family to sit down and answer these questions together. All right. So the first one that we're going to talk about is what is the total investment I'm going to make in my education? The next one, if you click the slide, how much debt is too much debt? And then finally, what other options are there to reduce the amount borrowed? So, like I said, get your phone out, take a snapshot of these questions, and we are officially encouraging you to sit down and chat through these with your family. When you are considering your journey into higher education and being a student. All right, so let's dive into that first one. So what is the total investment that I'm going to make in my education? So imagine with me that you are, there's two kinds of, you're going to the grocery store, and there's two kinds of shopping that I personally do at the grocery store. One is that I arrive at the grocery store, I get my cart, I kind of walk about the aisles and see things that I need or want or remember in the moment that I want, and I put them in my cart. And then I walk up to the cash register and I go beep, beep, beep. And I've got all these things at the cash register, and I don't really have an understanding of how much they're going to cost at the end. Maybe I have an estimate based on when I've done this before, but the number that is given to me at the register is not really one that I could have told you prior to that. The other way that I go shopping sometimes is that I have a plan before I even leave my house. I've written down sort of what I anticipate to spend, what I want to spend, and kind of what's going in the cart. I have informed myself on how much those things are going to cost. And then when I get to the register, although it's not always down to the dollar exactly what I expected, I do, hopefully, because I had a plan, I do have some understanding of how much I'm going to be paying when I leave. So I bring up that sort of silly analogy because I talk to a lot of parents and students throughout this journey, and I myself went through the journey of paying for higher education. And I think sometimes higher education and paying for school is treated a little bit more like option A, where we don't really have we don't really anticipate total cost of paying for your education. And in my world, in the personal finance and financial education world, that would be an anomaly around, how we help people navigate their finances. Because before you decide to purchase something, generally the first question is, well, how much does it cost? Do I need it? How much does it cost? And I want to encourage you to really do that. So if you go to the next slide. Great. So on the screen right now is this sort of quick equation that probably will take a little bit longer than what I have listed here, but the quick equation of really getting that total anticipated cost for yourself so that ultimately you can have an informed decision, be an informed consumer about what you're purchasing. And also, because a lot of people, if you're here, you might be considering taking on some education debt, the anticipated debt or at least a ballpark figure, and then you can make informed decisions around that. So that's pretty simple. It's adding up, when you talk about the debt side of it, it would be adding up federal loans borrowed, private loans borrowed, and money owed to family and friends. I add that third one because we'll talk a little bit more about this in a minute, but this could be not an official loan that you financed. It could be just an expectation, let's say, between parents and their children, things like that. So you definitely want to count that as kind of your holistic debt. I put it in quotes because it might not be with a bank, but holistic debt. Once you kind of have that overall total education debt, you want to think about making a debt management plan. And again, this is even ideally before you're making big decisions around how you're going to pay for school. Because if you're sort of calculating up your anticipated costs and you don't have a plan for that right away, then you could end up borrowing more than you anticipated, or not thinking about kind of creative ways to reduce the total amount borrowed. So a debt management plan is what you're aiming for. And the debt management plan is a plan of action. So it's what you're going to do beforehand to understand your debt, understand the terms, and make a plan for your repayment. So be that informed consumer. How do you arrive at some of these numbers? Well, obviously, for private loans, it really depends on the loan and the type. We'll talk a little bit about what to look for there. But from a tuition point of view, from a federal loan and private loan point of view of how much you're going to need to borrow, that's going to depend on tuition. So I put into the chat a few minutes ago tuition calculator. Again, this is not a perfect exact amount of what's going to be owed, but it gives you an amount to anticipate so that if you do plan to finance a portion of that, you know about how much you're planning to finance for that, and how much you're going to need to borrow. So a reminder here is do this and for the first semester, right? If you think about your first semester of tuition and then multiply that by the amount of semesters you plan to attend. So for some people that if they're planning to do 4 years, that would be multiplying that number of tuition times 8 and then add in any other extra expenses that you anticipate needing to borrow for there. So consider that amount and really make that kind of ground truth that, right? Talk to your family. If you're a student who knows that your parents are planning to give you some money, but you're not exactly sure how much, now is the time to really have that conversation and say, okay, so you said you might give me some money for college, or like grandma might give me some money, but like, let's talk numbers, folks, because I'm trying to make an informed decision here. And then also having that kind of conversation around, well, so are you loaning me the money? Are you giving me the money? What's the deal? Because sometimes those conversations are hard to have, but they're a lot harder to have after the money has already been used. So have those conversations now and get an idea of that total education debt. So let's say that you've done the work here, right? You've added up total cost of what you think, let's say your undergrad degree is going to cost, and then how much of that you're going to need to borrow. So you've got your debt, the first piece, which is your knowledge of debt, and your debt management plan. How much is that going to cost? Again, all throughout thinking, all right, what am I paying for here? What is this? How does this fit into my overall goals? So the next thing to think about is like ground truth it. Does this include everything? So does this include plus loans that my parents are taking out? Am I expected to pay them back? Or is it, like I said, is it sort of them taking on that debt, but no expectation to the student for the student to pay them back? Does this include graduate school costs? So if we're thinking about how much debt it is sort of worth it to take on to get a degree, we have to calculate total cost of attendance, not just what we're anticipating for undergrad, but even just getting an estimate of if you know you want to go on to, let's say, law school, which can be very expensive, how much is that going to cost? So are you including kind of all anticipated costs? I mentioned this before, but also put in there anything that's going to be needed to be paid for around living expenses, rent, utilities, transportation, things like that. So does it include everything? And then finally, when we're looking at loan options, two major things to consider here. It was mentioned earlier, kind of federal student loans versus private student loans. And a lot of people have a mixture of both. So federal student loans and private student loans will differ. And this is where we need to get into understanding the terms and conditions of each loan and how they are different from one another. So I'm just going to go through 4 quick things. You can kind of quickly jot them down. I'm in this webinar, I'm not able to get into the nitty gritty of what loan you are looking at. To do that, you'd have to sit down with a financial professional or make a call to the lender and ask more details, but some things to think about and ask. So look at interest rates and look at annual percentage rate. So, or APR. A loan's APR is the rate of interest that you'll pay on the loan in a year, represented as a percentage. So this could be higher than the interest rate shown. And so that's really important to note. You can ask for that. You can say, what's the loan's APR? This is a way to evaluate loans apples to apples. Federal loans have fixed interest rates. So that is, you kind of know going in what that would be. Whereas if you're evaluating private loans against each other, you'll want to get those things like APR, which help you compare apples to apples. Another thing to consider in kind of terms and conditions is taking a look at origination and disbursement free fees. So some loans will have an origination fee or a disbursement fee. Again, we're trying to get at that total number so you can make a decision, an informed decision about what you're about to buy. So what are those fees and how are they taken and when are they taken in the loan process? And do you know that when you're evaluating not just the interest rate, but also any fees that go into it? In that kind of vein, are there other fees attached to penalties or missed payments that you might be charged? Let's say if the loan is late. Things like that, you'll definitely want to look at in the terms and conditions because it can happen to anybody that you miss a payment, or let's say bank account changed, you forgot to move the automatic payment over. So definitely want to know that when you're comparing loans. And then another thing to consider is collection costs. So we want to plan to not have any collection costs, no default. But again, things can happen in people's lives that are outside of their plan and expectation. And it's important to read the fine print on any loan that you're taking out or considering taking out to make sure that the anticipated fees or costs, if you do have a default on a loan, are not surprising to you. So collection costs can be as much as 25% of a defaulted loan balance. So it's no joke. And you usually have to pay a fee to cover the collection agency's expenses on top of the principal and interest. So there's just a lot associated with that. Again, nobody plans to default, but that's more in the fine print side of things, just really considering the total cost. So we'll go to the next slide of how much debt is too much debt. This is a hard question to answer. And the main reason it's hard to answer is because there's not a single number that will be the same for everybody. Education is an investment. It's investment in your brain, and it's investment in a career, it's investment in your future. The goal of that investment, of any investment, is that it pays off and it yields. It yields hopefully more money than you put in. That's what a good investment would be. We don't want to make a bad investment in our education. And so, again, being an informed consumer means you do kind of the math when you're shopping around in the grocery store before you get to the counter. So, think about what the investment you're making and what your plan for the return on investment to be. And I'm saying investment, I also want you to hear how much money am I putting into this investment and how much money do I want to get out of this investment? So the first link that you see on the screen here is the weearn.psu.edu. This is often the first place I go to try and help someone navigate this question. Like, I'm borrowing a lot. Is like, how do I know if this is too much and if this is worth it? For example, a good first place to go is, well, what field are you planning to go into? There's so many good benefits of attending, of going to college and getting a degree. And we're not going to get into all of those right now. We're kind of focused on the money side, but one of them is that you hope to be able to monetize that degree, monetize your brain, make some income. And so checking out what the average earnings are on the degree that you're getting are a pretty good idea. So the We Earn survey is a great resource. It's looking at Penn State graduates after they graduate, Penn State alumni in their different fields. You can narrow it down by what field they were in, what degree they have, and you can see some real numbers and averages around what they're making and what they're doing with that degree. Some of the time that's pretty clear. It's like, I went to school for accounting, now I'm an accountant. Sometimes it's a little bit more murky, right? I was definitely somebody that did not go straight from my bachelor's degree into a field that is immediately adjacent. So think about what you plan to do afterwards and how much you anticipate earning. You can get a lot of that good information on We Earn. You can also, there's plenty of other ways to search that as well, looking at federal income statistics, looking at different degree paths on other sites as well. So this would be a great AI question too. Again, take it with a grain of salt, but they could give you a bracket of like, okay, what is your average mental health counselor make? Those kinds of things. So ask that question first. And then pivot to some of these sort of debt management guidelines that those in the personal finance and financial education world um, would say when we consider any kind of debt. And so those would be things like keep track of how much you need to borrow. So if that amount changes, reevaluate. Don't overborrow, right? Just because you're offered, you know, a loan for $25,000, that does not mean you have to take the whole amount because you're going to be paying interest on the amount that you take. So really think about what you actually need to borrow and be conservative in that estimate. If you have done the work on what your tuition and needs will be, don't borrow too much over that amount. You can always go get more, ideally. Um, so another thing that is sometimes said is don't borrow more than your first year's salary. Again, this goes back to that return on investment. If you don't know the first year's salary and anticipated degree, maybe go again, do that research. And it's not entirely accurate. There could be don't borrow more than your fifth year's salary. Maybe it takes a few years to kind of get into your average income bracket there, but don't borrow more than that first year's salary, right? Most people pay out loans over the course of 5, 10, 15 years. However, that first year salary is a good indicator of what you're anticipating in earnings versus your debt can be. And so that's a rule of thumb that some find really helpful. Another thing that's really helpful here is to calculate the monthly expenses you'll have and imagine having that student loan payment in the mix. So you can go to one of the center QR code goes to federal student aid estimating loan payments. This can be another helpful way to understand if what you're borrowing is aligned with your goals and your career path. So if you do some anticipated expenses around, the city you plan to live in, the job you plan to have, and what average cost of rent is in that city, for example. And then you go to calculate your average student loan payment based on the amount that you've already considered. And you get back a number that you're like, oh, I wouldn't be solvent in this vision of my future. Then that's a time to maybe reevaluate maybe one piece of the plan. It doesn't have to be the whole plan, but just one piece of the plan. How much you borrow, where you plan to live, what you plan to do, how quickly you plan to do that, etc. All of this is to say that I want to encourage you to look at the whole financial picture, not just 1 year from now, 2 years from now, 4 years from now, but like 10 years from now. Where do you want to be financially? And that is going to help you have a vision for whether something it's a wise investment or a wise amount of debt to take on versus an unwise amount. Another just tidbit here, if you've ever bought a home or taken out a loan, something that might have come up is called a debt to income ratio. This is an industry standard for looking at what is a healthy debt to income standard. How much debt do you have comparable to how much you earn? Generally, 36% or less would make someone a favorable a recipient of a loan to a bank. So this means that 36% or less of your gross monthly income goes towards your debt. So that would include housing. And student loans may just be a portion of that debt is another thing to consider. So place this financial decision within your overall financial picture. One last thing to consider here is just do you have a plan for loan forgiveness or service cores or a job that is going to assist in paying off debt? There are some careers and companies that will, once they've hired someone, help them pay back student loans, things like that. So that's another thing that if you have this plan dialed, right, do not count on that if you haven't researched it. But if you have a plan laid out and you're like, I know I want to be a public servant, or I know I want to do this service core that will offer me, this stipend to pay off my loans, then calculate that into the plan as well. Because I don't want people to hear like, oh, I can't go into a field that doesn't earn, tons of income, because there are options for people who plan to go into careers that tend to not be as lucrative. So those are other things to explore. And our office is a great place to ask about some of those opportunities for loan repayment, loan forgiveness, or graduated or income-driven repayment. All right, and let's go to the final question. So, what other options are there to reduce the amount borrowed? So on the screen, I'm just listing a few of them that I definitely want you to consider. So always take the free money first, right? Scholarships and grants. Take the time to fill out the application and do your research. Work study and student employment. There's a lot of good research that shows that students who are working, they're working during seeking their degree sometimes perform better both in their academics and also in kind of their life and skill building. This could just be because they have a very scheduled regiment of, I go to work, then I go do this, then I work out. So it shows some kind of agency. But it also might be that they're increasing their return on investment there, right? They're putting more of their own money into their education and kind of understanding the value of what they bought. That's a hunch that I have. It's not that part's not researched. Um, but it does have positive correlations with students staying in school, graduating on time, things like that. Another thing to consider is graduating early or utilizing summer breaks to reduce costs. So, this is not true for everybody, but you can speed up the pace of your degree to sort of have less semesters that you're paying to be in school. I encounter a lot of students who decide to graduate one semester early are really, really tactful about what classes they take when and their pace so that they can save, I put in quotes, one semester of tuition. So maybe they're planning on 8 semesters and then they can save that entire last semester. This benefits them too because they're not paying for their living expenses for that semester as well. They start earning more quickly. So that is an option for those of you who might be saying, this is a lot. Like, what's one place that I can um, reduce the amount of debt that I have to borrow? And then finally, considering campus as well. So at Penn State, not all campuses cost the same. So if you're headed to University Park, there are other campuses that cost less. Another one is World Campus, is a place that I've seen some students who are concerned about their debt load taking a look at. Maybe they were planning to leave, especially younger students, they're planning to leave their town or their parents' house or wherever they're living and go to a different campus and then get an apartment, pay for groceries, get a car, all those things. And they say, you know what, I could attend World Campus or I could attend a local Penn State campus for the first year or two and then transfer to University Park. And that can just reduce the living expenses side of things. So again, this is not one size fits all, but I'm just trying to throw out suggestions. If you're in this category of like, oh no, like I really want to reduce this amount that I'm borrowing because I've made myself informed and I would rather have kind of a different path forward. And then the last thing to consider is state residency options. Just make sure that if you are an out of state student, you are taking a look at kind of that in state versus out of state tuition. In some cases, not all, but it is worth it to look at, why are you not considered a resident and what would make you be a resident, those kinds of things. Um, so that was a lot of information to throw at you. Just the teaser, right? I just want you to hear that there is help to navigate these decisions, first of all, and that you have the agency and ability to have and ask these questions now. That's why you're here. That's why you're in this webinar. And so take the time to really make a wise financial decision for yourself and be an informed consumer about the debt that you're considering taking on. So let's go to that last slide for me, my last slide. And just a refresher, I work for the Socklove Miller Family Financial and Life Skills Center, and we're a team of financial educators that can help you navigate some of these costs. If you have questions about student aid, applying for student aid, that is definitely the student aid team. But if you have more questions around looking at kind of total costs, living expenses, those kinds of things, we're happy to help you. And you are able to book individual coaching sessions if you're an admitted student. All right. That was a lot. I'm going to hand it back to you, Damon.
was gonna say I was waiting for the thing to come back so it actually like let me click on it. Let me click on to my section. So as Julie mentioned, if you have questions about how to apply for aid, that will be under our categorization. So some of you folks may have seen this when we give our handouts at our ASEs. But here's how you go for your actual, like, if you want to look at how to apply for scholarships, get more information on grants and such like that. You can go to psu.edu/cost-aid. And so here you'll click on cost and aid, and you'll actually click on the types of aid down here. So there's when you click on scholarships. There we have a bunch of information. So here we have, if you scroll down, you'll see stuff for your academic colleges. If your academic college has a first year application, we also have like administrative units, like random ones on there as well. Additionally, we will have like a lot of the outside scholarship stuff as well. So if you have been looking for outside scholarships and want an additional search engine, that's also on there as well. So if you have not done so already, definitely recommend looking at our student aid website and kind of familiarizing yourself with this because there's a lot of helpful information out there as well. Again, psu.edu and then /cost-aid. Click on cost and aid. Then you'll go down and click on types of aid, and click on the sections there, and you'll be able to see all that information as well. So here's if you need help with financing strategies, I'll give you a couple seconds to scan that QR code, and then you'll be able to select that. Again, if you have any questions, you're welcome to reach out to our office, to Julie's office. We're here to help this process be a little less stressful. Understand, coming to college first year, a very stressful situation. I just realized my camera wasn't on that time. Apologies on that. Um, so if you have questions on the way, you're always welcome to reach out to either of our offices. We'll gladly help you along the process. So here are the aid resources. So again, you have our Office of Student Aid. For federal student aid, you'll go to studentaid.gov. For the Sokolov Miller Center, you'll go to financialliteracy.psu.edu. Again, when we post these webinars, they'll actually get posted to that YouTube page. We do have additional webinars coming up here in the next couple weeks. Our next one's May 7th about finalizing and maintaining aid. We will then also have our NSO webinar. Then we have a special webinar later in the summer with the Office of the Bursar. So I think we're going to click on to questions about financial aid, who actually, again, reach out to our office. If you have any questions, they'll give you a second to scan that QR code. And again, for the Socklove Miller Center, here's their information as well. So it looks like we have about 10 or more minutes. So I'm going to pull my colleague Craig up and Jolie back up. We're going to do a kind of a quicker rendition of the Q&A. And I'll stop screen sharing my up and ask you guys to come on back. Did totally just realize that my camera's off for that portion of that. Let me see if let me pull up this, see if there's any good questions here to. All right, Craig, I'm going to hit you with this one right away. Where do students go to fill out their do the FAFSAs?
Yeah, just studentaid.gov. And be the site to file the FAFSA, sites for applying for the Parent Plus loan, and any of the other things that you might need to do, like completing your entrance counseling, signing a master promissory note for your direct loans, all of those things right at studentaid.gov.
All right, perfect. Let me see if there's any good ones.
I've got one. Can students get an on-campus job even if they did not receive work study? Can I take that one?
Absolutely, Joel. You can answer and ask your own questions at your own leisure.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna come up with some of my own, even if they aren't in the chat. So yes, absolutely. So work study is not giving only students with work study permission to work on campus. There are jobs that on campus that do not require you to have work study. Sometimes, like in my office, we hire students and we post the same job twice, one for students who have work study and one for students who do not. So students can search for those jobs. They'll say work study eligible if they're looking for one of those work study eligible jobs, but there are a ton of jobs that do not require you to receive work study. My advice would be, though, if you are work study eligible, to look for some of those. There are some benefits around FICA taxes, things like that. So it's worth taking a look at work study jobs, but do not limit yourself by what is a work study job. And sometimes sometimes work study jobs pay more, sometimes they pay less. It really depends on where you're getting the job.
Yeah, Julian, I'll just add on to that too. When you're looking for those work study or wage payroll positions, start by looking within your academic program or department. That might help to stack the deck in your favor when those scholarship opportunities become available down the line in year 3 and 4. Also, don't be afraid to look off campus. There's tons of opportunities off campus that are very flexible, same flexibility in terms of the schedule. But some of those off-campus jobs can offer additional educational benefits. Certain employers, McDonald's, Sheetz convenience stores, you work, the pay might even be a little bit better hourly, and you might even get some money to help pay your bill for school. So lots of options out there. Just do some research.
Very good point, Craig.
Thank you.
So I was just typing out a question or looking at a question. So, all right. We get this one a lot. I'm going to give it to Craig on this one. Um, for military dependent students, how do they take care of getting those GI benefits or their GI, or their benefits for that?
Yeah, we have an Office of Veterans Programs. That's where you want to go to. Everything they take care of all that stuff for you. So best thing is to reach out directly to them. You can access their email, phone number through their website. But yeah, you want to start that process with them, and they'll kind of handle everything and take care of it. Fantastic folks there. They'll deal with it and take care of everything for you. You'll be in good shape in their hands.
And where can they find those folks if they're on campus, if there's some folks on campus tomorrow?
Good question. So usually, I think they usually have been having a desk available at our ASE events, but I don't know sure if they're there all the time or not. But their office is in the Rittenhour building, which is only about 100 or 200 yards from the hub. So it's real close. If you're there for the hub in the afternoon, you can always stop by Rittenhour and visit them and talk to them specifically right there in their office.
Wonderful. And
Got it.
Julia,
I've got
oh, sorry,
another one.
Julia.
Yeah, so someone asked, what happens if you're denied a private loan? And or even let's add to this, or a federal loan, like a Parent Plus loan. What happens if you're denied and you need to close the gap? Can we answer that first with financial aid? Like, what are your options there? And then I'll answer with what are your other options in the private sector?
Yeah, in terms of the eight options, you're really going to be kind of limited to trying to look at outside scholarships, things like that, other ways to try to lower the cost as much as possible. Outside scholarships, again, your best bet. Definitely take advantage of those resources that Damon mentioned earlier. We post things on our social media pages, those search engines we have out there. There's always tons of things available. So definitely hit those outside scholarships hard. That's going to be your best bet there.
Yeah, so from a overall picture of if you're finding yourself getting denied in the private loan sector, it could be an issue having to do with credit. And so that is where I would really, really encourage you to take a look at your credit score, take a look at your credit report as well, in anticipation of applying for private loans. See what's going on there. Most banks will tell you your credit score and kind of alert you to areas of your credit score that are causing it to be lower. And so that's a great thing to start working on now. There are some pieces of what goes into our credit score that can be fixed very, very quickly, right? Like utilization ratio. If you are exhausting a large amount of your total credit line each month, and that can bring down your credit score. But if you can get your utilization lower, that can start improving your credit score within a month or two. So it really depends on what is causing that credit to be adverse and causing the loan to be declined. And then I'll just add another piece there that a lot of times students are declined for private loans themselves because they don't have credit history. And sometimes it works out that a family member who does have a positive credit history can be their co-signer on their loans. But that is another reason to kind of talk to your kids about and set them up with opportunities to build their credit. So maybe the first year it's not going to be possible for them to get a loan, but within 1 year, if they have, if maybe let's say they're co-signed on a loan, they could be the single signer on a loan. So looking at credit and thinking about our credit, it's kind of like our financial GPA. Thinking about our credit score is a good thing to do.
Yeah, just add one more thing there too for some of those private lenders. It's kind of scary when you're being a co-signer because obviously you're on the hook for that. But a lot of those private lenders will offer a situation where once a student is graduated, they make payments for 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. Every lender is a little different, and it might get you removed from being the co-signer on that loan. So you're no longer responsible for it. So it's something that can be not quite as scary when you just talk to the lender and find out what those particulars are.
Perfect. And I was gonna have one for you, Julie, but you had to cut me off.
I'm so
Uh,
sorry.
it's okay. I was gonna ask I know we kind of went over like the debt to income stuff earlier, but what's kind of a general rule of thumb when you're applying for loans and doing all this process of the debt to income ratio?
What do you mean? Like what's the
Like,
percentage that you're like
yeah,
under
what's the
that 30?
percentage for it?
Yeah, so under 36%, it is going to be different lender. If we're talking private lenders, it's going to be different lender to lender. Um, so trying to get kind of your debt to income ratio in a favorable zone, so less than 36%. Is that what you're asking?
Yep, I was trying to
Yeah.
figure out how to word it in my head to ask it to you. I had it laid out in my head, but obviously it didn't come up. That's perfect because I
Right,
would.
right. And to not speak sort of numbers on that, when we talk about debt to income, this is how a bank is evaluating. They're trying to get some kind of metric to evaluate, like, is this person going to pay us back? Right. And one of the things is not, whether you're a good citizen. It's not, you're not getting declined because you're not a good person. It could just have to do with what other debts you have and how much they're seeing you're responsible month to month for paying other lenders. Right. And so that is kind of an important, that's why you have to look at the whole financial picture, not just the paying for college picture. But you can also, it is worth noting who is applying, right? Is the car note in one person's name and not the other person's? Again, consider the whole picture. You don't want your family to be, you don't want to get a loan that you can't afford to pay back. But if you are in kind of a gray zone of getting a good interest rate, for example, be choosy about look at who's holding different debt in the family and maybe pick someone who has the higher credit score or the better debt to income ratio if that's possible.
Wonderful. Thank you, Julie. And so I do see our webinar is kind of closely coming to an end. We're going to answer a couple more questions and we'll progressively type the questions as we go through this. But I saw, Craig, here in this somewhere there's a question about comparing work study to our wage payroll positions. So could you elaborate on how those work?
Yeah, again, really no difference between the two. It's just a matter of, basically who is making the payments. You can't even apply for a federal work study position unless you have the offer because it is tied to need as determined by your FAFSA data, whereas the wage payroll is not tied to the FAFSA in any way, shape, or form. Other than that, pay is typically the same hours, same flexibility. Like as Julie mentioned earlier, the only one advantage to the federal work study is the income that's earned by that doesn't count towards your taxes in future years. But other than that, really, there's no difference between the two.
And if students are interested in looking into the wage payroll positions and the benefits that are there, where would they be able to find that?
Yeah, you can go to our website, is psu.edu. Down at the bottom, you'll find a link to careers, or you can just go to our HR site, just hr.psu.edu. And you can put in federal work study, wage payroll, and narrow it down, and you can find all the different possibilities that are out there. Always lots of things posted. Always recommend you try to start that application process. If you're starting in the fall, you want to start that in July or early August because it does take some time to get through HR. So you want to make sure you have that position secured so you can begin working as soon as you get to campus. If you don't start applying until you get to campus, you're going to be halfway through the semester and not have as much time to earn as much money.
I'm going to do a quick plug there for kind of food services places on campus too. They hire a ton of students, and it's a great place. Sometimes it's nice to get a work study job that's maybe in your major, or I hire a lot of finance students. But if you are coming in for the first time, it's a great place to start there, and then maybe you can transition to a different job later. But they're always hiring.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank both of you. So, Julie, I'm going to give you one. Ready for this?
Ready.
Uh, Is there an amount that you consider is too much to borrow over 4, 5, 6 years for other education?
Oh, people always want me to answer this question, and I had a whole slide right on why I really can't answer that as a number because let me give you let me put it differently. It is about what you anticipate to get. What is your return on your investment here? And so if someone says, I'm borrowing $200,000, and I go, most of us might be like, is that a good idea? But then they say, but, I plan to go on to be a heart surgeon and like, they really lay out their plan. They've thought through it. They're explaining to me like how much they're going to borrow, what scholarships they're going to apply for, what fellowships they're going to do. And they're like, I'm an informed consumer here, then that might not be too much in that case because med schools are expensive, right? On the other side of the coin, if you're like, I'm not really sure, I don't have a plan, but I really like the football team. I think that would be, but like, and I'm like, oh, well, have you done any research around like what your total cost, things like that? I think what I'm really going for is not a number, but are you informed on the decision you're making? And then I'd also be remiss to not mention that like we all come from different means. And so for some folks, $50,000 is going to be a ton of money to spend on education. For others, maybe their parents saved, maybe they saved, maybe they worked prior to coming to school and getting that degree. And so that really varies person to person, but be an informed consumer. Know exactly how much you anticipate to pay for the product.
Wonderful. Thank you, Julie.
I
So it looks like
dodged
we're,
it.
yeah, I was gonna say, great job dodging it, but
Yeah, I
informing it
mean,
in a
because you
better
can't.
way.
You can't. Yeah, you can't say a number because it's going to leave somebody out who might be making a really sound decision for themselves for a number of reasons that I don't know.
All right, folks. So we're going to end our kind of live Q&A portion of this, but we'll continue to stifle through the questions that are popping up in our chat here. Thank you, folks, for joining us, taking time out of your evenings to join us. And again, this will be posted early next week. You'll get an email when this posting is when it's been online, and be able to watch it again then. If you have any questions, you're always welcome to reach out to our office and Julie's office as well. Again, we're here to help you folks. But everyone have a great rest of your evening then.